The new congressional maps collapse one of two seats in Congress representing the Austin area. District 35, currently held by Greg Casar, virtually disappears from its current configuration to become a district with a new Republican majority voting population. This while District 37, held by long-serving Democrat Lloyd Doggett, expands further into Austin, adding to the district's Democratic-leaning voting population. Joining us now is Congressman Greg Casar. Thank you so much for being here. What a roller coaster it's been the past few weeks.
Yeah, we are trying to get used to the crazy.
I can't even imagine. And do you think these new district lines will withstand legal scrutiny?
Look, I believe that this kind of radical redistricting is totally illegal. And in fact, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which was signed into law by LBJ, and then he handed the pen to Martin Luther King, that law was signed to block maps like this one. And so I think these maps are illegal. But I'm also clear-eyed about the fact that the Supreme Court has been stacked with far right-wing justices who too often determine outcomes that are good for Trump, not outcomes that are good for rule of law.
And Congressman Doggett has announced that he will not run should these new maps take effect, ceding the one Austin area seat in Congress to you or other potential opponents. What's your reaction to that, and do you expect to run unopposed in this race?
I'm grateful to Congressman Doggett. I'm grateful to all the time I've had to serve with him, and I learn from him all of the time. I've chosen to run here in Austin because it's my home city, the only place I've lived my entire adult life. I love this city, and it's been the honor of a lifetime to serve it on the city council and now in Congress. So I'll be running for re-election here if this map holds, even though I've said, of course, that I don't think the map should. But if it does, then clear-eyed I'll run here. And then it's up to anybody in the community. Anybody can run for election here. And so it's my job to go and earn people's votes.
Texas has touched off a redistricting war nationwide, and other states are joining in. Why are the midterm elections next year so important in that?
Look, Donald Trump is the most corrupt president in American history, in my view. He is selling seats at the White House to come and talk to him for $1 million. Not $1 million to his campaign, $1 million to him and his family personally through their cryptocurrency schemes. He's accepted a $400 million jet from a foreign government. He doesn't want to get held accountable for that. And so instead of getting held accountable in the upcoming elections, he's trying to rig those elections by changing the rules before the election is ever held. And so that's why I think it's so important for people to go out and vote in unprecedented numbers, so that no matter how they try to gerrymander us, they don't silence the voices of the American voter.
And that being said, Austin and the new district you are running in remain a blue oasis in a very red, conservative-dominated state. What keeps you hopeful, if anything, about the future for Democrats in Texas?
I have been all over the country, and especially I've been touring Republican-controlled districts. And I've been going and visiting those places with people like AOC and Senator Bernie Sanders, and seeing enormous turnout. Just the other day, I went to Tucson, Arizona, very far away from where you and I are standing, very far from my home district, to a rally that was supposed to be inside a high school gym with a capacity of 2,000 people. We thought we would be really excited if 2,000 people showed up. 25,000 people showed up. We had to take over the entire football field. It was the biggest rally in Arizona history, and that's in a Republican-controlled area. I went and did the same thing in Amarillo, Texas, where we jam-packed an enormous auditorium, myself and Senator Sanders. And so I think there's real energy out there, both in blue areas like Austin or in traditionally red areas, because I think right now the billionaires are screwing everybody else over. And it's time for us to say, if it's the billionaires against everyone else, it's up to Democrats to go talk to everyone else, everybody that's not a billionaire.
Now, let's turn to some specific policy matters. You recently attempted to tour an ICE detention facility. What happened during that, and what are your concerns?
I went and visited the Teton Hutto detention facility right here on the outskirts of Austin, Texas. And under the law, a member of Congress arriving at one of those facilities should be let in to check up on our constituents, to make sure people are being treated humanely. And I had heard from constituents that they had family members inside on one of these 100-degree days without air conditioning, being mistreated. And this detention facility had a history of reports of sexual assault inside against people inside. So I went to go check, and they had a security guard at the door who turned me away. Even when I read them the law that said members of Congress should be allowed inside, they just left me at the gates. And they also weren't letting in attorneys who showed up, not with me, but showed up on their own, who were showing up to talk to their clients. They were also being turned away. And in my view, when they're breaking the law, when they don't want you inside, then they've got something to hide. And that's why I've asked for my name to be added to a lawsuit of members of Congress that are suing to make sure the law is enforced and make sure that we're allowed to go inside these facilities, because we don't want people being mistreated. And we're seeing that more and more everyday people who've done nothing wrong, who pose no threat to anyone, are being caught up in this immigration raid dragnet that Donald Trump is launching. Donald Trump said he was going to be going after dangerous folks, but instead I've seen here in Austin and in Texas a 10-year-old US citizen recovering from brain cancer being deported, construction workers on construction sites here just being picked up, US citizens and people with legal permanent resident status being swept up in these ICE raids and then put in these facilities where there's reports of really bad conditions.
And another topic we want your thoughts on, funding for federal agencies connected to weather and climate science. Following this terrible summer flooding here in central Texas, questions were raised about things like the National Weather Service and FEMA, and how have budget cuts made these agencies less effective?
Donald Trump let Elon Musk take a chainsaw to many of our federal agencies, including FEMA and the Weather Service. And that puts us all at risk, whether you are Republican, Democrat, Independent, or none of the above. We need to make sure we can predict terrible storms coming, floods, freezes, wildfires, and then take care of people in those areas. And look, Trump's cuts to the Weather Service meant we were left without a scientist in charge here in Central Texas when those floods came through. Donald Trump's Secretary of Homeland Security made huge changes at FEMA and cost cutting at FEMA that delayed search and rescue for those during those July floods from FEMA by 72 hours. It shouldn't take 72 seconds to approve search and rescue. And so I've introduced a bill that I hope will earn bipartisan support to fully staff FEMA and the Weather Service back to where they were before Trump and Elon Musk's cuts. So far, we've seen real Democratic support, and I'm waiting on Republican support just from 3 or 4 Republican members. So we can say, let's get FEMA, the Weather Service, and NOAA back at the level of staffing and funding before Elon Musk came and took a chainsaw to these vital agencies.
That's definitely one of the bills we will be watching in these special sessions. Congressman Casar, thank you so much for being with us and answering our questions.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and leave us a comment below to let us know your thoughts on this video. And don't forget, you can watch full episodes of Austin Insight for free in the PBS app.